going to be making some colorful Indian corn. You're going to want a white paper, pencil, Sharpie, and some coloring supplies. We're going to start by making the shape of our corn. We want it about 5 finger spaces away from the top of our page. So I use my hands to help guide and measure that. I do a tiny little mark, and then the shape of my corn is like a long, thin oval. It gets smaller and closer together, more narrow as it gets to the bottom, but doesn't make a sharp point like a triangle. It stays that rounded. I do it nice and lightly with my pencil. Then I'm going to add the husk, those leaves that surround the corn. I add some loops. Again, this is about the space of my finger, if not a little bit larger. I'm going to start by doing my vertical lines. They go up and down. Again, spacing with the size of my finger. Notice these lines aren't perfectly straight. They curve in just a little because corn is a cylinder shape. It is rounded, so it's not perfectly straight. Once I have all my vertical lines, I'm going to do my horizontal, side to side. Again, using my finger as a guide to lightly press with my pencil. The key is to do it super duper lightly because these lines that I've drawn are just my guidelines. They are not going to be the lines I will see at the end. Now my Sharpie is going to be used to go over top. Make sure you have something underneath so it doesn't bleed through. I'm going to start by going over my husk lines, and then I kind of add some texture in towards the center because the husk isn't perfectly flat. It has some folds within it. You may add those if you wish. Once I have my husk finished, I'm going to do one kernel at a time. It's almost like a rounded square. It's not a perfect square. It's not a circle. It's sort of a mixture of the two. And I'm going to have it fill in each of those square shapes. Now, sometimes that square is a little too big, so I can squeeze 2 shapes into one another. And that is totally fine. There will be some gaps, and that's great too. They should not be fitting so perfectly next to each other. Think about how your teeth fit next to each other as you go. So I'm going to do one kernel of corn at a time. This might take a little bit, and that's okay. Take your time as you go. Fill all the way to the bottom of your corn. Notice the difference between the 2 corns. One took their time doing each individual kernel, and the other one just went over top of the pencil line. One looks more realistic, while the other one just has lines going through an oval. Now it's time to add color. You can use markers, you can use crayons, or you can even use watercolor or colored pencils if you have them. You are going to start by erasing all of your pencil lines. As all of your pencil lines are erased, you're going to take one color at a time, and you're going to be coloring in your kernels. Notice how I do not color in kernels with the same color right next to each other. I do a few in each row and then move on to another color. I even add some of those colors into the husks. That will be repeated whether you do it with crayons, whether you do it with markers, or whether you do it with watercolors. You can even take your markers, use a paintbrush, and you can use that to kind of give a painted look. Main thing, make sure the same color is not next to each other. Notice my tip of using one color, filling in a few spaces at a time. There are our colorful Indian corn.